All right. So let me get kind of situated here right quick. This is kind of, I've done a video like this before. I haven't done a video to upload in a while, but I've done a video like this before, and so this is kind of like a special request, I guess. But I'm going to try to basically do a walkthrough and it kind of like a tutorial. So let me kind of explain why I'm making this video for maybe people that don't understand the recording process or whatever the case may be. The old system is basically everything is being routed through a mixing console like this one. You do all your monitoring, you do all your routing and everything through the console. But the console is more than just a routing. It also has, a lot of them have their own board. Each channel has an EQ, an equalizer, and each channel usually has filtering and mic preamps and all that, so forth. Now, the object in recording, the way it used to be, was the object was to record live musicians and singers, and that would usually be done in a live room. That's the reason why they would call it a live room, because that's where live musicians would be. In today's recording systems, most people are recording into a digital audio workstation, and most of them are going to use Pro Tools or Logic Pro or Studio One, Ableton Live, Reason, and so forth. They're going to use some sort of digital audio workstation, and because of those digital audio workstations, they usually already have a built-in recording console in the DAW, as well as what we call outboard gear, which is behind me. But we don't really call it outboard gear in the DAW world. We call them plugins. But it's basically the same thing. The only difference between what's going through an actual console and outboard gear is everything is done to route. You're listening to everything through the console, and all your gear is being routed into the console via what we call a patch bay, to patch gear in. Usually in DAWs, you just insert, or whatever the case may be. Now, in the real recording world, or we like to call the analog world, or whatever the case may be, your channel count of how many tracks you have is fixed. So some consoles have 32 channels or 40 channels or 56 channels or whatever. Many channels that console have is about as many channels of tracking that you have. I.e. also your tape machine. Now with modern world, we don't usually record the tape machines anymore. We record to the computer. That's where everyone's recording, onto the hard drive of their PC or their Mac. So that's where that's really the difference. So the object is to record to a DAW or to a DAW, because your DAW is inside of, it's a software program in the Mac or the PC, right? So instead of getting tape machines or whatever case, what are we buying? We're buying audio interfaces. An interface unit, which will then converts all signal coming in into digital, so the computer understands it. and then it's converted from digital back to analog where we as humans can understand it, right? So AD to DA converters, right? So to understand the whole entire process is to understand signal flow. Now, one last thing before I do a walkthrough of the signal flow in this as a tutorial is to understand that you have choices of outboard gear and how you route it affects your signal. So if I want, the object is to get it from whatever source is coming from your live room, or whatever the case. Maybe it's in your room, wherever you got your recording studio set up, whatever. The object is to get it through the interface into the DAW to record it. That's the object. In the studio world, if you go to a commercial studio, what's happening is all the instruments are plugged into channels that are going to route through the patch bay into a console, and out of the console into to either a tape machine or to a audio interface, which then goes to your PC or Mac. That's the only really difference. So there might be people that might say, well, why would I want to go through a console and all that and a tape machine, whatever, and I can just record directly from I can record directly into the interface and into the DAW. There are a lot of people that are recording that way. But I'm just going to get people to understand signal flow. So in the studio world, where you have a bunch of outboard gear, what you're having is just different choices of compressors, reverb units, delay units, equalizers, and stuff like that. And a lot of times you want to incorporate some of that gear. You want to go through that gear to let that gear do what it do as you record through into the interface and then into the DAW. That's the object. So a lot of times if I'm recording a bass or I'm going to record some vocals or whatever the case may be, the microphone would then need to go from there into either the preamp on the console, because you need to pre-amplify the vocals to bring the microphone volumes up to line level or a loud enough signal. And then that's then going to come from the console, and I might want to incorporate, I might need to use a compressor or something like that to create a signal chain. So one example would be I might want to record from a microphone into a choice of whatever preamp I want to use for the vocal. If that's preamp, then it either is going to go into the console, which then for me to monitor to listen to what I'm listening to, and then it's going to go from there out of the console into my interface, which is then going to go to my DAW to be recorded. But let's say the microphone preamp isn't enough. I might need to create some other processing to then enhance my signal, which is what a lot of recording engineers do anyway. So a lot of times my microphone would go from the microphone into maybe a choice of a preamp, out of the preamp into a choice of a compressor to control the dynamics. And then it's going to go into the interface, which then goes into the DAW. That's all it is about signal routing. So, to keep it a long story short, it's just a matter of what compressor and so forth, what microphone preamp and all that I want to do. So, want to use. So I'm just going to do a quick walkthrough of how it would come, as I'm recording into a DAW or into the DAW. So we're going to, I'm going to turn on equipment, and I'm going to send signal from one of these keyboards, and I'm going to show you how it was going to come through the console into a piece of gear. Then it's going to go into the interface to then be recorded into the DAW. And then that way you understand, because the concept is the same in your DAW, except there's just no, instead of you have an external mixing console in your DAW, you have one already built into your DAW. And a lot of times with the plugins, some DAWs have some plugins already in the software, and then a lot of times we use third-party plugin companies like Soundtoys or Isotope or IK Multimedia or these different companies that make plugins, which is basically software emulations of outboard gear. But instead of you patching it into a patch bay, it's already, you just got to download it to a part on your hard drive, and all you got to do is insert it on the channel or create an auxiliary channel or maybe create a bus channel in your DAW. That's the only difference other than through a console. So I'm going to do a part. This is where I'm going to show you how that works. All right. So what I'm going to do, and it's tutorials to kind of get an understanding of the signal flow to get it from whatever source you're going to record into the DAW. Now, how it would work in a recording studio like mine, because my recording studio is set up similar to like you would go to any commercial studio, except the only difference is this is a bedroom, but the concept of how I do my recordings in here is identical to a commercial studio, i.e. less some of the stuff that they have that I can't do because it's in the house, but the concept of the signal flow is identical. And you might ask yourself, well, why do you have it set like that if you got it in your bedroom? And I'm going to say one thing, because it works, and it works well. So I'm going to show how well it works. So without further ado, all right, so over here is my keyboard rig, right? These were my keyboard rigs. I recorded a simple drum beat, nothing special, this is for demonstration purposes. And what I want to show is all my keyboards that are here are routed to this mixer right here. I got a mixer right here, a 16-channel mixer. And the output of that channel, 16-channel mixer, 2-channel output, is then going to this patch bay, which I have on the floor. In most recording studio setups, that patch bay would be on a wall or something like that, where you could plug in your instruments. The same thing with all, like you can see here, the same concept, like my microphone that would be here, or other microphones, or whatever the case I want to record, or there's my guitar cabinet, or just different stuff, microphones or whatever I want to record, within route into here. Now the output, the back of that patch panel, patch bay / patch panel, all the outputs are coming into the top row of this patch bay here. So this patch bay is then all my outputs of coming into this top patch bay. The bottom row is then continue into my mixing console here, the recording console, the desk of the console, and then each on those same channels are direct outs. Those direct outs are the ones that you see that are red, blue, yellow, and green. Those are direct outs. Those are going into the interface that's in the rack here. So I'm going to do a walk around. I got a bunch of patch cables because I'm going to patch in a compressor to those drums so you can kind of see what's going on. So the front of the patch bay, which is here, and then my interface, which is this antelope, says 44.1. That's the Antelope Orion interface. That's what's going to my computer, which is I got set up over here. My DAW. Right now I got Cakewalk, but you can, like I said, with any DAW, you can use Pro Tools, Logic, whatever. The concept is the same. In the old system, I got a hard disk recorder down here. Below my interface is a 24-track hard disk recorder. Instead of going to the DAW, I can also maybe choose to go into that hard drive, 24-track hard drive if I wanted to. And I can control it with this controller right here. Or you've probably seen some recording studios where they would have a tape machine. Well, I have a tape machine, but instead of being a 2-inch or 2-inch reel-to-reel tape machine, I have 8-ats, which is basically 8-track, and there's 3 of them to give me 24 tracks of recording. But with tape machines and 8-ats and hard disk recorders, you're limited to your track count. That's why a lot of people like DAWs, because DAWs can give you 50, 100, 200 tracks if you want to. That's the only difference. But the concept is to get signal into it. So what's happening is from my keyboards over here, the keyboards over here, the mixer, the output is going into 7 and 8 on this patch bay. So now it will come into 7/8 of channel 7 into the console, but instead of being channel 7/8 on the console, it's actually channels 31 and 32. So that then is going to go into the DAW. I'm going to show you. So I'm going to play this beat that I just sequenced, and we'll start from the beginning. So I'm playing this beat. It's now coming out of this mixer and is now being routed into the console for monitoring. So I have on these 2 channels right here, so the channels, so I can monitor through my speakers those drum beats. That drum beat is now the direct out of that 2 channel right here is now being directed out into the interface, and then it's coming into, let me come over here, into the DAW. So now you can see right here, I got signal. That's the object. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop this drum beat right quick, and I'm going to patch in a compressor to show you how that would work. So give me 1 second. So what the object is, I'm going to patch in. I'm going to patch in a couple of cables to go into the compressor, and what's going to happen is the sound's going to, that instead of coming directly into the console to go to the interface to go into the DAW to record, is now going to be redirected, which means I'm going to break the normal signal flow, breaking the normal, what we call on the patch bay, because it's normalized to go from the live room / to the console, from the console to the tape machine / DAW. Well, it's normal to go that way, but I'm going to break it by patching in a compressor because I want to control some of those drum dynamics of that drum beat I just sequenced. So now I'm going to patch in some cables into a compressor, and then we're going to go from the compressor, and then it should reroute into the compressor. Then it's going to come out of the compressor into the console to then be recorded. So now it's coming out of my live room. So now I want to come out and I want to record into a compressor. Now the object is to figure out which compressor I want to use. All right. So in this situation, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I might go into, let's see, inputs 11 and 12. All right. And then the output of that compressor, 1 and 2, should then I got to bring it back out. So then I'm going to continue to go back into that same channel. And I'm going to send it, now I'm going to go back and continue the route. And now I'm going to start the drum beat. Give me 1 second, I'm going to start the drum beat. So now what's going on, I'll show you what's going on now. What's happening now is I patched in this compressor right here. So now what's happening is this compressor here is compressing that drum beat that I just, right? As you can see by the signal. So you can see signal there. So now it's now still being routed into the console, and from the console it still goes direct out to the interface into my DAW. The only difference is I patched in a compressor because I want to control some of those drum dynamics. So I would set the compressor, the threshold, the attack, the release, and all like I want. It's the same thing you would do if you're going to record vocals. But because I don't have a vocalist to do that, that's why I don't have a mic pre. But it'd be the same thing. I would. So let me stop the drum beat and hold on right quick. Okay, so all right, so that's going to complete the signal flow tutorial. And then next, what I'll do is I'll do a part 2 tutorial of signal flow for once everything's recorded. So what you're going to do is you're setting up your signal for recording into your DAW. And then what you're going to do next is once you've gotten everything recorded, you're going to start deciding which pieces of outboard gear you're going to patch in for mixing. You know, and then once you get everything mixed, then everything's going to come. After that, you're ready to print your final master copy, and that's what's going to be the one that everyone hears when it goes to mastering and so forth. But that's the concept of signal flow and how compressors or EQs or whatever. If I want to use an EQ or a compressor or whatever the case may be. Whatever I want to use to affect, you know, the whatever piece of gear. So a lot of times you're deciding which mic pre and how you're going to route it. So a lot of times for me, how I do it is I decide, because I'm in channels, you know, the patch bass coming into these channels right here for what I consider my live room. My instruments is going through that, which is then coming in through the patch bay, which then comes into the console for me to listen and monitor. And you get zero latency with that. A lot of times when you record directly into a interface, sometimes you have to worry about latency. That's the point where you are trying to hear or record something or whatever, hear the playback or whatever, versus when you actually hear it. And sometimes trying to monitor and record at the same time, you can get latency issues. Well, when you go through a console, there's zero latency. So my object is, I'm not worried about the latency when I'm recording. As long as it's C signal and I record, it records it. I'm not worried about the latency there. I'm worried about latency and what I'm monitoring. And this has zero latency. And after that, I just decide, do I need to put those drums through a compressor, or do I need to run vocals through a mic pre, which I definitely need to run the vocals through a mic pre. And then from there, do I need to go through a compressor? Yes, maybe no. It depends. So, a lot of times it's going to be decided if I'm going to run it from there and decide which piece of gear I'm going to use for processing. And you have to decide, because sometimes just because you have gear to process, like outboard gear or whatever, doesn't necessarily mean you need to use it. Sometimes you listen to it and say, nah, that doesn't need any compression. No, that doesn't need any, whatever the case may be. So, I hope that explains it, because in a DAW, which I'll do a tutorial with just, you know, how you would just record into a DAW, that's going to be a tutorial part 3. But these first two videos are about the signal flow. So basically it's coming from your instruments from into your live room. All that has to go through some sort of patch panel, like you saw. I got that little patch bay on the floor there. But that has to go through a patch bay coming from the live room in a recording studio. That's how they're going to do it. Then from that patch bay, everything's going directly into a patch bay, like you see over here, my patch bay. And then from there, it then comes out of the patch bay. It's going to come directly into the console for me to monitor. And then it's going to be either bust out or direct out into my recording. A lot of times it would have went to a tape machine, maybe a hard disk tape machine, or into an interface that goes into a DAW. It's your choice of those type of recording mediums. 99.5% of most people are recording into a DAW, Pro Tools, Logic, or whatever the case. And then from there, the playback, all my tracks that I go to record into my DAW, the outputs of my interface are coming on into channels 1 through 24 on my console. So I'm dealing with 24 channels. I try to keep no more than 24 channels, because for me, that's all you need. You know, back in the day, that's what you had, 24 track tape machines. But a lot of times people have 50 channels. A lot of times, if I had that many channels or tracks, I would put them into subgroups, groups. And then the groups would then come to my master. So, and then I would put whatever process on the master, you know, whether it's going to be a master bus compressor or EQ, whatever, on the master, that I'm going to print to be my final master. But that's the concept. So I hope this helps the signal flow, the thought process to the signal flow. Other than that, thanks for watching. Y'all have a great one.